Hello everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video, and I happen to be showcasing products from the Simon Says Stamp October 2021 card kit. But in today's video, I'm not only showcasing the kit, but I wanted to kind of focus on using a card design and translating it to a second card, something totally different, but yet the same general concept. Have you ever looked at a card project and think to yourself, oh, I would love to turn that into a slimline card, or oh, I saw this really cool slimline card and I want to turn that into an A2 card? Well, that's something I do often, whether it's something I'm inspired by somebody else, or something that I've created on my own, and then think to myself, well, that would look good as a slimline card, for instance. Well, that's something I don't think I've ever shown on video, and I wanted to kind of focus on that today. I ended up creating an A2 card with the kit, which happens to be this card right here, and it inspired me to try to translate that into a slimline card, and that's the second card that you're seeing right now. So this concept is great, and it's a great example for how you can take a card design and make a few adjustments, and you can get a very similar look, but yet a totally different card. So let's jump on into the card project. One of the things included in the October kit is this awesome stack of rainbow colored cardstocks. These are all Simon branded cardstocks cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and this new Kaleidoscope embossing folder. So you're going to get all these pieces that I'm showing you right now in the kit. I'm pulling out a spray bottle. This happens to be a distress sprayer, and I'm misting the air and waving my cardstock through it. That's making my cardstock just slightly damp. And this trick is super helpful when you're embossing onto cardstock like this. The moisture of the paper helps prevent the cardstock from cracking as you run it through your embossing folder, because this is a deeply etched folder that's going to give a really deep impression. So it's really helpful to mist your cardstock before you emboss. I'm embossing multiple shades of colored cardstock, but I'm not embossing every sheet. My plan is to create some paper strips and a variety of strips, not just embossed, but also some that are plain. So I'm pulling out a variety of rainbow colors, and I've kind of laid them out ahead of time to figure out which ones I wanted embossed and which ones I didn't. And so now that I have my plan figured out for the arrangement on my card, and now I'm doing the cutting. So all the plain pieces of cardstock are going to be cut to 3/4 of an inch, and then all of the embossed strips are 1 inch. So these will cover up some card bases really nicely, or panels, and that's what I'm going to be doing first. Is I'm going to cover a panel that's 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So all of these strips are going to fit nicely on top of this panel, and there will be a bit of slight overhang at the very end, but I'm not too worried about that. I'll just trim it off. I'm using Simon Says Stamp's Ultra Smooth Glue Stick to attach these strips down. It's really fast and easy, and because it's a glue stick, it can get into the nice little corners and nooks and crannies of the embossed design and really help hold it down well. After all that adhering, I then put my entire panel onto an A2 white card base using the Simon Says Stamp Dot Runner. So my card panel has been attached to my card base. My card itself is mostly built. Now it's time to add a sentiment. Included in the kit is this speech bubble stencil. Really cool variety of speech bubbles included in this one single 6x6 stencil. And so I'm going to use a Simon Says Stamp ink. This is the new Pawsitively saturated ink in Celery. I'm using a Simon Says Stamp blending brush to blend on that color and create a really nice halo around the edges of my speech bubble. Then I will use my fine tip scissors to fussy cut the speech bubble out. Now this is a really basic shape, so even if you're not into fussy cutting, I have a feeling that this won't be too intimidating for you, and you'll be able to really easily cut this out. It takes literally just a couple minutes. So once I have the speech bubble fussy cut out, then I'm going to bring in a sentiment. There's a stamp set in the kit, which is also the namesake for the kit, called So Talkative. And I'm going to stamp this really big greeting onto this big speech bubble. But I'm not going to just stamp it with any color. I'm going to stamp with multiple colors. So my plan is to stamp the first part of the greeting, which says, "Sending so many," in intense black ink. The next part of the sentiment reads, "Happy thoughts." And I thought that that would look really pretty stamped in a colored ink. So I'm going to pull out Simon Says Stamp's Mandarin ink and ink up that portion of the greeting. Now you'll notice I'm using tape to cover over the areas that I don't want to be inked up with those other colors. So I'm very carefully just kind of inking up things, and I was reusing some tape that is pretty much no longer sticky at this point, but I was trying to save tape, so I'm really carefully trying to hold that tape in place as I'm trying to ink up only the words happy thoughts. So then once I have that stamped, then I'll bring in the final portion of the greeting and ink up that with the rest of the intense black ink. And that'll complete the sentiment to read, "Sending so many happy thoughts, I can't contain them all." I thought that was a really unique greeting. I think it fits really well for a variety of occasions. All right, so my speech bubble is getting popped up off of my card using some foam tape. And then finally, I'm going to bring in some Moonshine sequins. Now, these aren't included in the kit, but they're a great addition if you wanted to purchase these while you're buying the kit. It's a great add-on item. They're a really versatile color of sequin and can be used with almost any project. So that is the card that I made first. We have these really great bold stripes that look amazing behind our really large greeting in the center of the card. The embossed details too really add some nice texture to that paper and break up the stripes a little bit, so it adds some interest to the background without it being too simple, because the rest of this card is quite simple indeed. So having that little bit of texture just makes this card completely finished. So this inspired my second card. I loved the paper details so much, and I loved the big greeting in the middle, that I wanted to go ahead and try to translate this to a slimline card. So I've cut a bunch more strips, and I'm going to again glue these down with Simon Says Stamp's Ultra Smooth Glue Stick. This time, these strips are quite a bit larger than my slimline card as far as length goes, but that's okay. We can trim off any excess, and that also gives me a little bit of wiggle room to attach some of the embossed strips in different variations, so they're not all exactly lined up exactly the same. So it just gives you a little playtime and wiggle room, and you can totally adjust this for how's best to fit your card design. So I'm going to carefully make sure I press down those strips really, really well to make sure every part of those edges are adhered nice and strong. So once I have all my cardstock strips attached, I will give it a really good press and cut off any excess. Now, of course, like I said, I wanted to make sure to have the big greeting in the center, but because my slimline card is so big, I actually need more than one greeting. So I'm going to stencil multiple speech bubbles with Simon Says Stamp's Pawsitively saturated inks, plus a few inks from the Simon Says Stamp Premium Dye Ink line. So first I used Pucker, then I pulled in Sunbeam for that nice yellow. My third color will be with this long skinny banner, and this one's going to be Celery. I really love this celery green. So before I move on to the next speech bubbles, I wanted to stamp out my sentiments so that I could get a good look of how this was going to turn out and how many more I needed, because I hadn't decided at this point how many speech bubbles were going to end up being on the card. I was hoping for a total of maybe 3 or 5, and in the end I ended up with 5. So I really like how the odd number plays into this. Odd numbers visually look better. They kind of keep our brains from counting things. I don't know why, but there is a psychological reason behind it. And so anyway, we're working on stamping the greetings, and I'm using those same ink colors that I used to stencil with, or in some cases I use darker inks, like here I'm using Perfection for the green color. But basically I'm choosing some colors that are similar to what I've already done my stenciling with, and if I need to, I stamp more than once so that I get an even darker impression. So this will create some really nice tone-on-tone greetings. So here's where I decided to add in my 4th and 5th speech bubbles. I started off with Blue Violet, and I'm going to create this really nice bold speech bubble. This one's going to look really great paired with some pink. And this time, I wanted a tiny speech bubble that did not have a greeting in it, but instead a heart. So I pulled out Hot Mama ink. It's one of my absolute favorite colors of Simon inks, period. And I'm going to stencil this heart that I have from a Simon Says Stamp stencil. And the only reason I chose this particular stencil was because it was the perfect size heart. So I just masked off one of the hearts. Then I'm going to pull out that long skinny speech bubble, and we're going to alter this. I'm only going to ink up the left-hand side of the speech bubble and very carefully make sure I only have that side ink blended. Because once I have that side ink blended, Then I'm going to shift this stencil down so that I can form a smaller version of this speech bubble. This sounds complicated, but watch how I do this. So I'm going to line this up where I stopped and then carefully reapply the tape to hold everything down so it doesn't move as I finish up the stenciling. And I'll finish off the right-hand side and bring in that ink color. So what this ends up looking like is a finished off ink blended speech bubble that ends up being a lot smaller than it was originally intended, but I think it looks awesome. So next is to stamp that final greeting on my last speech bubble, and this of course is the same blue violet ink that I used to stencil the speech bubble in the first place. Give it a really good press to get a nice dark impression, and finally we're going to go ahead and attach all these speech bubbles down onto the card. Now there's 5 of them here, and I'm kind of playing around with them as I arrange them so that way I kind of make sure that everything's aligned really well and evenly. I don't want any weird gaps or anything like that. And I'm overlapping so that none of the sentiments get covered up either. So you just play around with it until you get the look that you're going for. And then after everything is fully adhered, I'm going to have these really awesome big greetings cascading down the middle of my card. So very similar concept to the card that we created in the beginning, but this time there's more than one because we have so much more space. I really love this look. And of course, because I used those moonshine sequins on the first card, I need to incorporate them in the second card. So I'll just use some glossy accents to adhere a few of these down around the speech bubbles. And here are the 2 cards side by side. You can totally see how that A2 card inspired this slimline card and created a very similar but completely different look because we translated it to a totally different card style. And I think that's what's really cool. And one of the things I would love to encourage you to do is to look at card designs. Maybe you saw an A2 card that somebody made and you loved it, but you were really wanting to create a slimline card. Just take that card design, alter it to fit how you need it to fit for the style of card that you're creating, and you're going to have a really cool design that looks awesome. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this project. These are 2 very colorful cards, all using contents from the new Simon Says Stamp October 2021 card kit, which is called So Talkative. If you are interested in purchasing the kit and you aren't a subscriber, you can purchase the kit at retail price, or if you are interested in subscribing, you can subscribe to Simon's Kits. It's a no obligatory subscription, so which means if you don't like a particular kit on a given month, you could opt out of that kit and still be part of the subscription for the following month. It's a really great service, and I think it's a great way to be able to save some money too, because if you're a kit subscriber, you get a discount on the kit price. I hope that you were inspired by today's project and that you enjoyed seeing me create these cards. I can't wait to come back and share more with you, but until I see you all again, I hope everyone has a very wonderful day. Bye!